Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, Tom Laidlaw, the former NHL defenseman for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. And Tom, I'm sure you stayed up late to watch the Oscars last night.
Yeah, you know what? I had to rearrange my sock drawer, so I missed that.
Yeah.
I'll get the highlights. Will the highlights be at the NHL Network today, or what?
Yeah, well, they'll be everywhere, but probably nowhere that you will actually find them.
Okay.
So you missed the big M&M coming out and kind of surprising people.
Was it chocolate or peanut butter M&M?
Yeah, wrong M&M in this case.
Oh, okay.
Well, why don't we just go to something that we both know something about, which is the NHL. And Tom, incredibly bad news for the Columbus Blue Jackets this morning. Seth Jones suffered a lower body injury last night, and they're using the word that I hate, which is he's out indefinitely. Like, I hate that word because that's not day to day, and that's the kind of word that leads you to believe, boy, this could be a while. That we're talking maybe weeks instead of days. And boy, is there another defenseman right now in the league who is as important to his team that Seth Jones is to the Blue Jackets?
Well, especially the way the Blue Jackets play. Right? I mean, Tortorella is the coach there, got playing. I think way above. Well, I should be careful the way I say this. I was going to say way above their talent level, but he's getting the most out of their talent. Let's put it that way. And Seth Jones is that epitome of get the puck out of the zone quick. He's got that big long reach for a defenseman. He can do it all. He's power play, penalty killing. So they're getting a lot out of everybody, but out of him, he's been fantastic for him. So that's going to hurt. But listen, the way they play there in Columbus is it's kind of that next up mentality. So, will they? I mean, geez, you can't go too long without a player like Seth Jones. But are they okay for a week or two without him? The other guys will step up and get more ice time and do more things. I think they can get by because of the way they play with that disciplined team game. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. They're hard to play against, and it's not just Seth Jones. It's everybody, and it speaks to the kind of the way that John Tortorella coaches. He wants his players to be belligerent, and for the most part, they are. And I think he's got so much out of that team, and I think it helps too that Zach Werenski has had an incredible season for the Blue Jackets, particularly offensively. I think he has 17 goals now, which is I think he broke actually Seth Jones's record, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But he's got 17 goals, and I think Werenski is a much improved defensive player as well. I mean, as always the case, the more games you get in the NHL, the better usually you get defensively if you put any effort into it. And Werenski has done that, but the timing of this is just so horrible because, as you mentioned, they're playing really, really well, and as well as they've played, it's far from a certainty that they're even going to make the playoffs. Like that Metropolitan Division and the wild card in the East is just so highly competitive that who knows what'll happen there. And I don't know what's Seth Jones worth in terms of wins over a 10-game.
Yeah, but you know what? I hear you, Kev. But I got to tell you, it makes me think back to when when I was in New York. We had Barry Beck was our captain, and obviously he could do everything. Same kind of thing: power play, penalty killing. I was more of the defensive defenseman. And when he went out of the lineup, it wasn't just me, but I found myself I had more opportunities because Barry was gone. And I felt myself that I had more responsibility now with the team too. So I did more. In fact, people would come up to me sometimes and say, Tom, why don't you play like this all the time? Like you're doing more. But when Barry came back, it's now because he was filling a bigger role. So those opportunities weren't there for me. So I think it's, again, I don't think you can go too long with losing a Seth Jones. We couldn't go too long without a Barry Beck. But other guys are going to step up and get more opportunities, get more confidence in the game. If it's a short-term thing, in some strange way, it may end up helping the team that other guys now have gotten more confidence in their game. They've done more things. They've shown the coach they can do more with Seth not in the lineup. So we'll see.
Yeah, and again, it's so hard to know because we in the NHL, we don't reveal injuries. And that's something I've always wanted to ask you because I always forget. Obviously, as a journalist, I've always been frustrated by the fact that you never quite know how long someone's going to be out of the lineup. But how do you feel about that? I mean, obviously, the argument from the league perspective, from the team perspective, is that your opponent can use that to their advantage if you reveal the guy's injured and he comes back and everybody knows exactly what it is. But I always sort of had the impression that most players that news around the league, no one's keeping it quiet. Like the opponents always know where the guy's injured and so forth.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's one of those deals that I think, especially during the playoff series, somebody gets hurt. It seems like, well, you can't tell him because they're going to target. Like if he's got a bad ankle, then somebody's going to hack him on the ankle to make it worse again. I don't know. I guess it's. I can see the point of why you don't disclose what exactly the injury is, but when I ask this question, I don't mean to be sarcastic when I say it. Why is it a big deal from the media side that both what the injury is and how long the player is going to be out?
Well, I mean, it's just hard for you to. I mean, it's easier for you to then draw some proper analysis of what needs to be done. Like the trade deadline's coming out. So if we knew, for example, that Seth Jones was going to be out 2 months, as opposed to maybe being out, a week to 10 days, that changes how we would analyze what the Blue Jackets need to do. But, for the other thing too, I always said, especially regarding stars, and I've actually, I've never had season tickets to an NHL team, but I've known people who do, and I know that this actually does happen. And what I'm referring to is, if you have season tickets and you're selling some of your games because you can't afford to pay the $5,000, if Sidney Crosby is playing for the Penguins, you might hang on to those a little bit. Right. But if he's not, then maybe those are the ones you want to sell or go for. So, and I've always felt like fans are, like shareholders. I mean, they invest in the team. Like they don't own the team. It's not the Green Bay Packers situation, but they're $5,000 or $6,000 for a pair of tickets. Contribute. So it'd be nice for them to know kind of what they're going to get, or whether they should give their tickets away. Maybe they get it away. So I just sort of believe in transparency, and I just have never really bought the argument that the other team, it's a competitive advantage. I actually am more inclined to buy the argument that, it's that guy's personal medical information. Why are we giving that out? But even that I don't buy, because I think when you sign up to go in the NHL, you sort of know that, when I break my leg, people are going to know about it. That's just the way it is. Now, saying that, and this puts me in the minority among other journalists, I've always felt that, you shouldn't have to report illnesses. Like I remember at one point, Thomas Vokoun had a blood illness or something in Nashville, and they just had a press conference and sort of explained it all. I was glad he did. Everybody was able then to write about everything, but I always felt, I didn't feel like he needed to reveal that. Like that, that's his own personal. That's not the same as a blown knee.
No, that's a good point. I never thought about it that way. And I'll tell you what, I never really thought about it that way from the fan standpoint either. But I do remember, obviously, I was living here in New York, and Wayne Gretzky was in his final season. I had Darren Langdon was a client on the Rangers at the time, and he told me about the Rangers weren't doing well at the end of the year, and he told me about 2 weeks prior to the Rangers playing their last home game, that was going to be Wayne Gretzky's last game in the Garden, that Wayne was going to retire. So I went and bought 4 tickets right away. I didn't go through the Rangers, went and bought 4 tickets. Yes, they're really cheap at the time. It was obviously at the end of the season, they weren't doing well. And I took my sons to the game. And once the word got out that Wayne was retiring, those tickets I could have made a fortune on those tickets by selling them. So, I had that inside information, was able to buy the tickets. And so you raise a good point. I mean, if fans know that Wayne Gretzky or Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin is going to be playing in a game, they may want to sell those tickets.
Yeah. And it just kind of helps everybody sort of assess, where their team is. Now, I've talked to numerous fans, and most fans are totally fine with the team's not revealing any information. So, my argument really, I'm representing people who don't want to be represented. Like they're totally fine not knowing. What's going on, because their idea, they're buying into the whole thing is that they don't want their buddy Tom Laylaw getting hacked on the ankle because the Islanders know that he has a sore ankle. So for whatever that's worth. Anyway, well, let's move on. I wanted to talk a little bit about Sunday's afternoon game between the Bruins and the Red Wings. And what's fascinating about that is that, first of all, it's 2 weeks in a row that we've seen an excellent game. Like the week before, we saw Washington and Pittsburgh, and the Penguins played like a Stanley Cup contender in that game and ended up winning that. Well, yesterday, we had the best team, the Boston Bruins, playing against the worst team in the league, and they're not as good as their record indicates, and their record's terrible.
Right.
But the Red Wings stepped up and played a terrific game. Like how you've been there, Tom. Like, how do you explain that?
Well, first of all, you're right. 50-point difference. So Boston goes into the game at 80 points, and Detroit at 30 points. So 50. Imagine that. That's a huge spread right there. Normally when you see that kind of stuff happen, I would put it more on the like in this case the Boston Bruins, to say they didn't come prepared. And I think maybe early in the game you could see that they weren't totally prepared like they normally are. A very professional team, very prepared. But as the game got going, it wasn't like they didn't compete. Bernier net for Detroit obviously made some great saves. But I got to tell you, I think it was more. I like this in the sense of the Detroit Red Wings. I saw more pride from the Detroit Red Wings, saying, "Listen, we're out of it. We're not going to make the playoffs. We're not close. This team is way better than we are, but we're not going to quit here." They were blocking shots near the end of the game. They were composed. They weren't running around. Boston had the puck in the Detroit zone, but they couldn't get it through. Like I said, Detroit players were sacrificing their body, blocking a shot. So to me, if I'm Steve Yzerman running that hockey team, I'm happy with that. I'm saying that, well, these guys have got some pride. This is a terrible season. We're a bad hockey team right now. We know a long way to go before we're going to get back to where we were as an organization, but we didn't quit today. We, and not just didn't quit, but really sacrificed for the win. So, like I said, normally I would put it more on the shoulders of the team in the Boston Bruins. And again, they weren't perfect early in the game. But late in the game, they came after. Bernier made some big saves, but it was the rest of the guys in Detroit doing a great job as well. So I loved it from Detroit's end. To me, it was the season. Sometimes I watched them play in other games. It's like, oh, guys, come on, you got to have some pride. And that game on Sunday, they had a lot of pride.
Well, I think Steve Yzerman agrees with you. He said within the last few weeks, he had actually a rare interview. Steve doesn't talk much, during the season. He just does his thing, his managerial thing. And he basically, because there'd been a lot of discussion in Detroit about whether Jeff Blashill was going to survive as coach, and he basically said what you said, that he's very close to the team. He goes to all the practices, and he felt there still was a lot of pride, and that Blashill, runs a terrific practice, and everybody's organized and into it, and he saw no reason to make a change. That's essentially what he said. He basically gave Blashill a vote of confidence, and he all based on what he sees, in practice and how hard the team is working. There's no question they're at a talent deficiency here, and that their defense hasn't been nearly good enough. And Jimmy Howard has not had an exceptional season in goal. Bernier has played well of late, but he had an injury. But what I've seen, they've played a couple of good games here in the last couple of weeks. And one thing I've noticed is, the defense has been a little better. They brought up a guy named Gustav Lindstrom, not Lidstrom, no relation. No, the spelling is completely different. And he is a young player, 21 years old, seems to be defensive minded. And I think they see a future for him in that role. And he's played pretty well for a young player. Mike Green has come back into the lineup, and Green, who has played well for them. If you went on balance from when they signed him, he's played pretty well for them, but he hasn't this season. But he's been injured, and now he's come back. I thought he played well against the Bruins. There was a few times when they needed the puck out, and he was the guy that got it. He's very poised back there. So I think Yzerman realizes, look, he could have gone out and gotten some veteran players on defense to plug the holes. They could have been more credible, more competitive, but that's not part of the plan. The plan is like, look, they're going to get a real good prospect this season, somewhere in the top 4, and then the rebuilding will continue. So I think what you saw there on Sunday, if I may be so bold, is to say you saw some hope.
Yeah,
you saw that maybe that Larkin and Bertuzzi, and Mantha's not back yet, but Anthony Ciu got a couple of goals, and he has been terrible this season. This guy scored 30 goals in this league, and that was goals 6 and 7 on Sunday, and he's minus $1 billion. Like, I don't know what it is now, but he's like minus 35 or 37. I don't know. So I'm sure somebody out there knows, but he's minus a lot. He has not had a good season, and that's why.
Here's my question for you, and I asked this question because you brought it up about Blashill, the coach there, and it was brought up, I think, by maybe Mike Milbury during the game on Sunday. So Gerard Gallant is out there, a former teammate of Steve Yzerman. Steve Yzerman, the general manager. Gerard Gallant, former Detroit Red Wing. To me, the prize catch of the free agent coaches right now. He's out there. So Yzerman's saying the right things right now at Blashill. Does he wait? Does he say to himself, okay, what is the point of me firing the coach now? This team isn't going anywhere, so let's just keep the coach we have. Does he fire the coach or let the coach go during the summer and then hire Gerard Gallant? What do you think?
Well, I think it's possible. I mean, their relationship is true. Like nobody's making that up. They're not just saying, "Well, those two guys were line mates. Surely hire them." These guys, they like each other. There's a lot of mutual respect there, and there'd be a lot of logic to that move. However, saying that, we always forget an important factor. Gerard Gallant is going to get a job somewhere. Does he want a rebuilding team? I mean, maybe he does. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, look what he did with Vegas, right? An expansion.
Well, yeah, but that was a different situation. That was, a lot of veteran players being merged together. Now he's going to have to work with younger players.
Yeah.
The veterans on the team are going to be like Larkin and Bertuzzi when it shakes out. Because look, Green's going to be gone next season. Daly's going to be gone next season. If everybody had their way, Abdicator will be gone. I'm not sure they can move his contract, but they might buy him out. Darren Helm could be gone. So this team really will be younger next season. Now, again, I don't know. Maybe that's what Gerard wants to do. Maybe the lure of working with his buddy Steve Yzerman would be enough. Now, I also think that he was sincere, he being Yzerman, about Blashill. I think he likes Blashill. Now, the team did horribly, and somebody's usually got to pay a price for that. So, I don't know that what the career expectancy of Blashill in Detroit is, but it can't be great.
Remember, I'm Gerard Gallant too, and I've seen, what does Steve Yzerman do in Tampa, right? He took that organization and built it to what it is today. So I'm saying, yes, and to your point, very good point, I'm going to come in, I'm going to be dealing with some young kids. It's going to be frustrating early. I've shown I can take a team that isn't expected to really do too much and get a lot out of them. So I can, as a coach, I know I can do that. And if I hang in there for 2, 3, 4 years now, do we have another Tampa Bay up in Detroit that Steve Yzerman has built, and I'm the coach there. So,
I mean, I see your point. A lot of my readers have said for a long time they'd love to see Gallant. The other point I would bring up, and again, this may mean nothing, but Blashill is a lot more like John Cooper than Gerard Gallant is. He's Blashill and Coop are sort of what I would say modern style coaches. They've gone to a lot of coaching clinics through the years. They're very modern in their approach. They try to be tough, but they're communicators. Neither one of them would be considered either a player's coach or a disciplinarian. They're kind of right in the middle. They kind of walk that line. We know what Gerard Gallant is. He's a motivator. Players like to talk to him. He gets them going. He's an old school guy.
Doesn't he go home and eat his Kentucky Fried Chicken after the game or something?
Maybe I don't recall. But I remember going in to see him and talking to him and about his power play. And they hadn't been going well. It was like 1 for 20, and he basically said, I look at the statistics, and I follow the analytics, and I know that it shows that we're not going well, but when I look at it, it seems fine to me. Right. Like, I'm inclined to leave it alone because what I see makes a lot of sense, and I think we'll just eventually sort of break out of it and be a good power play. And that's exactly what happened. He didn't overthink it. It looked right to him based on the fact that he's been playing hockey since he was 6 years old. Yep. And it looked like a good power play, and eventually it was.
Okay. All right. So here's my prediction then. So they'll finish out the year at Blashill. Steve Yzerman will let him go, and then he's going to hire Gerard Gallant at some point during the summer, right? So you've heard this on, what is this, February 10th?
Yeah.
It's down. Okay.
Yeah, man. I would say that's a very good scenario. I just don't know. The one thing that I do know, and I'll say this: anybody that says they've gotten a scoop from Steve Eisman's lying.
No, totally.
Steve Eisman gives no one a scoop.
Yeah, totally.
He's very careful, and he probably hasn't even made up his entire mind yet about what he wants to do in the postseason. He's a guy that he's very sincere. You could tell when he gave that interview that I'm sure that was it. Since it came upon the time that season tickets had to be renewed, I'm assuming that the ownership said, "Hey, Steve, you need to say something about all this because we're trying to get renewals and fans want to know what's going on." And he just went out and defended Blashill. So,
hey, you know what? I'm a little bit remiss here. When we were preparing for our podcast here today, I forgot to bring up the Toronto trade. And that's interesting, right? Because remember, I was the one who was preaching that Kyle Dubas, the GM there, this is the team that he's built, and he's going to play with this team. He's not going to go out and change the style of this game. And he goes out and gets a goaltender. Plus, he gets Kyle Pickard, a big tough guy.
Yeah.
And it was interesting watching the press conference with Kyle Dubas, too, the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He almost begrudgingly, it was almost like he was defending the fact that he was like saying how good of a player Kyle Clifford was. He wasn't just there to be the tough guy, because I don't think he wants to admit that he went out and actually did what a lot of people thought he should do, and that's toughen up that lineup. So,
plus he's not done. He's looking for a defenseman. That's really clear, and so it's going to be interesting to see. And I totally understand that. Like, I am supportive of that because I think that offense is so good. Yeah. And I like Anderson, and he'll be healthy at some point. And I like that trade. Campbell, I thought, is a very good backup. Right. And in this time, this era of hockey, like, that backup's important because you need those wins out of him. You can't give up those 2 points, and I think Campbell can get that. But I like this Toronto team, but you can't win with their defensive style. And I think one 20-minute defenseman. And I know your argument, is that one guy is not going to change anything, but I think it would. I think one 20-minute guy whose sole purpose is to prevent the other team from scoring would sort of allow everyone else to kind of do their thing, and I think it would help.
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's what I know. It was only one period really. They played Montreal the other night and ended up losing. It was a 2-1. They lost. They were up 1-0 in that game late in the game. And what I saw a team without really an identity. So I got my feeling is I see Kyle Dubas wanting this team to go, go, go. And they were sitting back trying to play defense, and they're not designed to do that. So either you are right, and they've got to go out and get that defensive defenseman. But to me, getting one guy isn't going to really turn that team into a defensive juggernaut.
But you don't need to do that.
Yeah, but the rest of the guys are all go. If you watch them on that third period against Montreal, they were out of their element trying to play a defensive game. They to me, they should have just, we're up 1-0, let's go up 3-0. Like, sitting back and playing at our end just doesn't work. We're not good enough. So one guy isn't going to really come in and make him into a good defensive. But as
well as I do that in today's NHL, even with their offense, they're going to run into defensive teams like the Boston Bruins that can shut down that offense or slow it down. And on those games, they got to prevent the other team from scoring. And
one guy's not going to do that.
Pardon me?
One defenseman isn't going to do that.
Well, no, but he can help. Like, I mean, they have guys that, can play. They're capable of it. Like, Morgan Riley is not, and I know he's injured, but, he's not a guy who only thinks about offense.
Right.
But I think one guy, like, I think back to the Edmonton Oilers, and I always thought one of the, in the 1980s when they were lighting it up and scoring a lot of goals, everybody always talked about their offense. But, when they had to, they had Grant Fuhr in goal who could make big saves.
Yep.
They had, Kevin Lowe, Charlie Huddy, and Randy Gregg. And, with the exception of Kevin Lowe, none of those guys were heralded defensemen. But they could play solid, dependable, spans of 15 to 20 minutes and, keep the other team from going crazy on them. And I think that's
after playing against the Edmonton Oilers back in those days, especially when I got traded to the Kings. I can tell you this though. Here's the problem. Here's what I believe Toronto wants to have is that, okay, you can press in our zone. You're playing against the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're playing against the old Edmonton Oilers. You can press in our zone. You can press in our zone. We've got a good enough goaltender that he's going to make the big save. And if you get too wound up in our zone, we're going to turn the puck over and get out of our zone quickly with a Paul Coffey pass or a Charlie Honey pass. So same thing with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and now we're gone. And that 2-1 lead that the Toronto had or Edmonton had now becomes a 3-1 lead. And now you got to open it up even more playing against them. Now it becomes a 4-1 lead. That's what I believe they're trying to do in Toronto. And I don't think one defenseman is going to change that. They've got to decide, listen, no, we are going for it, or else we're going to be we got to change the direction we're going with this team and become a better defensive team.
Well, that was the Dominic Hasek argument in Buffalo. And of course, they only got to the final, and then Brett Hull cheated them out of a Stanley Cup championship. But, they used to say that all the time. We don't, we have the luxury of having Hasek back there who can save our bacon. But Hasek didn't win that cup until he got to Detroit, and he had Nicholas Lidstrom and other guys who, could, play sort of defensive style. I just don't know, like the other argument for them going out and getting a Dillon, a Martinez, I'm trying to think who else.
Like a Brooks Orpik kind of player.
Yeah, getting one of those guys. Like, I don't think that would disrupt anything on the team. And I think that, that would give them sort of a breathing time when they knew that guy was on the ice, that he was only worried about one thing. He was worried about keeping the puck out. And, that would sort of allow them to have some period where, they could really push harder. If that's possible, because they're always going. And I just like the idea. Plus, I think it sends a good message. Like, boy, we like this team and we believe in it. And, we're going to add, one guy. Like, I'm pretty sure the Maple Leaf players all know that they're not good enough defensively. Like, I don't think that.
But here's the thing, though. Like, see, to me, playing better defense, when you're a skilled player like an Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner, to play better defensively doesn't mean you are changing your skill set. It means you're making more of a commitment in your thinking process. Right. They played in New York here a few days ago, and Austin Matthews had the puck in his corner, in his zone, battle for the puck in the corner. He's got his skate on top of the puck, so his back is to the play, and he decides that he's going to try to kick the puck back out into his slot in his zone to make the play. A risky play. If it works, wow, that's fantastic, right? And that's what he's looking for. He's looking for the wow factor. Doesn't work, gets turned over, and New York goes in and scores. Like, that's the kind of stuff. That's not a skill set that he had. It's a mindset that he just doesn't have. He's got a quality, right? So to me, it's like getting those guys to believe, like Alex Ovechkin learned and like Sidney Crosby learned, that yes, you can still be that great offensive player, do great things offensively, but you can be a good defensive player too, and that's going to help us win cups. That's what they need to learn. But that still doesn't mean, to your point, that they can't go and get a better defenseman to kind of show them the way. Like, this is the way you win games. This is how you win championships, by playing better defensively.
Well, the way I view it is for those of you out there who are James Bond fans. And James Bond, of course, has the 00 designation. And what that means is he has a license to kill. And he can do what he needs to do. And then he's not going to be questioned about it. Right. Because he is a 00 agent. And, a lot of people forget this, but there was a 005 and a 006 and a 008 as well.
I did not know this. This is good. I didn't know this.
So they also have license to kill. Right. And the way I view stars as, Austin Matthews and, Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux, and you've even talked about it, Larry Robinson, Ray Bourque, they were 00 agents. They had license to kill. So by that, I meant they can take chances. And we're not going to question them. I'm not going to anyway. Right. I'm not going to question Wayne Gretzky taking a chance, or Mario Lemieux, or Steve Yzerman, or Austin Matthews, or any of those guys, because they've earned that right. We know how skilled they are. Right. And in order for them to be who they are, they've got to take chances. So I'm not looking for those guys to play defense. Now, some of them do it anyway because that's part of their makeup. They know that that's the smart play. They know that's their best chance of winning. They know that they're, that it's a way long shot to do something different. So they don't do it. They just have those instincts and everything else. But I just think that, you got to have 00 agents on your team if you want to win. But then you have guys who's, you can tell them, I know Mike Babcock, one of the players who played for him, said, the one thing about it isn't known about Mike Babcock is he leaves his top two lines alone. But lines 3 and 4 belong to him.
Yeah.
Like he tells you how to play and what he wants out of it. And I think that's how most teams, I think, operate for the most part. They may not look at it like that, but I think there are guys on the team that everybody knows, and you said it yourself. How many times did you see Larry Robinson throw that pass up the middle that you would never try in 100 million years? Because if you did it, the New York Daily News is going to write a story about what the heck was Laidlaw thinking, and the same thing in Boston. You think anybody questioned Ray Bourque about him throwing passes up the middle or taking off and leaving somebody behind in a potential 2-on-1 situation? They just didn't do that. Anyway, that's my take on all that.
Well, I like it. The famous Herb Brooks line, Laidlaw, if you got the puck, give it to somebody else. You're not supposed to have it. So that was pretty cool.
All right. Well, this time went way too fast today. We'll talk next time, and let's put it on our list. I want to talk about the Olympics because you and I have differing opinions about that. And it sure looks like they're cracking open the door a little bit, they being the NHL, to go back to the Olympics. So we're going to talk about that next time in depth, and I'm going to give you my take of why this is a good thing, and you're going to tell me why it's not a good thing.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell everybody why you're wrong again. But that's,
yeah. Well, I'm sort of used to that, so that's the way it goes. Anyway, you've been listening to the Laidlaw and Allen Report. I'm Allen. He's Laidlaw. We'll be back later in the week.
See you guys.